Hey, welcome to Stunner Stage. Today I'm going to talk to a friend of mine by the name of Paul Dockendorf. Some of you may know him, a lot of you won't. Paul's one of those guys that works behind the scene to make sure that the show you go to see is a great show. He's one of those guys that makes sure the band that's playing for you has everything they need to put on a great show. He's one of those guys that cares about everything musical and all the people that are coming to see it. Paul isn't a musician, but Paul loves music. Paul's an entertainment director for Treasure Island Resort and Casino right here in Minnesota. Some of the greatest concerts that are coming around the cities now are starting to come to Treasure Island. It's not just the older crowd anymore, and that's thanks to people like Paul. So hang out with me and Paul, and let's hear how music spoke to him, when music spoke to him. Let's hear what it did for him, and ultimately what it does for us. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Paul Dockendorf on Stunner Stage. Paul, thank you so much for coming here. This is awesome to have you.
Thanks for having me, man. It's good to see you.
I've known you for quite a few years, but I've never asked questions or gotten to know you as deep as we will today.
All right, well, fire away.
All right, first off, what I ask everybody is, we're all involved in music. How did music speak to you first? When did it speak to you first? When did it become your thing?
You know, when I was a kid, and I'm talking a little kid, probably 3, 4 years old, my dad was in a band, and he was a bass player, kind of like you. And I remember my mom used to bring me to shows when I was a kid. I remember running around this bar, and my dad was in the band, but you didn't know it was cool back then. But I grew up in a family of music. So my mom always had music playing. Dad always had music playing.
What was the music?
It was like Earth, Wind, and Fire, Journey, Doobie Brothers all the time, ZZ Top,
Okay.
Jethro Tull, and like Steely Dan, stuff like that. But then, as I got older, because I always had music, then I kind of got into stuff, and I remember the first band that I ever was like, I have to have that band. I had an uncle, and he gave me a Kiss record and a Motley Crue record. And I remember listening to it and bringing it home to my mom, and she took the Kiss record and was like, "You're not listening to this." And she, threw the record away. Whatever, it was the silver platinum record
Oh wow! So
with
it was
Love
like the
Gone on it and all
yeah.
that. The funny story is when I was old enough to buy my own stuff, the first CD I ever bought was that record.
So how old were you when you brought Kiss home and your mom said, "No, that's not happening"?
I was probably about 10.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah,
That'll do it. That's a little
10
scary.
years
Still
old.
trying to keep you innocent at that
Yep,
point.
yep.
So you had the Kiss record, and then what was the other record you brought home?
Motley Crue, Theater of Pain.
And she was okay with that.
She was okay with that because, she didn't, I don't think she knew who Motley Crue was quite yet, but she knew who Kiss was for some reason.
Well, Kiss was probably closer to her generation.
Yeah.
Motley Crue, Theater of Pain, they were very pretty.
Yeah, they sure
And
were.
Home Sweet Home was the big hit. So
Yep.
it kind of, okay, they're good boys.
Yeah.
No, they weren't. But still.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So when you got old enough to buy the platinum album again from Kiss, how old were you then?
I was probably 14, maybe 15 years old. Yeah.
So was that around the time you go to your first concert? What was your first actual concert?
First concert I ever went to, I remember very clearly, was Motley Crue opening for Ozzy Osbourne at the Met Center.
Oh my gosh. How old were you then?
It was 1983, so like 9.
I was going to say, because my first concert was Theater of Pain.
Yeah.
And I believe I'm older than you.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wow, you went young. I was not allowed. I was
I don't think I was allowed either. It was the same uncle that gave me the records, so
ah
mom might not have known.
okay. All right. That's a pretty classic one.
Yeah.
Like what's funny too is that question in my very first interview, I didn't ask that question. Tony Williams brought me that question. He said you should ask people that.
Yeah.
So Tony, thank you. So yeah, so your first concert is opening for Ozzy with Motley Crue. So it's the Looks That Kill tour.
Yeah.
Yeah. So were you? Did you know those songs when your uncle took you, or was it just all crazy? What do you remember
I don't.
from that
I
concert?
just remember it being so loud, and just like you're a kid. It's like all the fire and the coolest thing ever. And Ozzy. Back then Ozzy was like this scary dude to all of us young guys. We heard the story. He bit the head off the bat and all that stuff. But it was Ozzy, scary Ozzy. So, but it was just like one of those like things like, wow, this is real. It's not just like on TV or you reading about it in a cool metal magazine, Metal Edge or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like it's real. These people actually exist.
So and at that time, you being 9 or so, you probably didn't recognize any of the aromas in the air.
Oh, no, I had no idea. And it was but yeah, I just remember it being very loud and just one of the coolest things ever. I remember I got a T-shirt. My uncle bought me a T-shirt, and I hid
From
that
which
T-shirt.
band?
It was from Motley Crue.
Okay, because he gave
Yep.
you the Motley Crue.
Yep. And I hid that T-shirt for a very long time.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I suppose you're only 9 or 10, and she's
Well,
already
yeah.
taken away the kiss. So
Well,
you
she'd
don't
probably
want
be like, "Where'd you get the T-shirt?" And the dates are all on the back then.
Oh,
When
there
you
you
had
go.
real concert tour T-shirts.
You were probably supposed to just be spending the night at Uncle's, and
Yeah.
next thing you know, you're going to a rock and roll
Yeah,
show.
exactly.
Well, I mean, it sounds like your folks were into jam rock and rock. It's not
Yeah.
like they were
Yeah.
unhip. They were just 70s hip, not 80s hip.
Yeah, my parents were very, very cool. They used to have party. We lived out in the country, so they would have these big, huge volleyball parties. There was always music, always a lot of people around. Like I said, Dad was in a band, so we always would go over to the band rehearsal spaces, and
What was the name of his band?
it was like the Daydream Believers or something
Oh,
like
wow.
that. And it
Like
was,
a Monkees tribute?
it wasn't like that, but it was like it was basically like they played a lot of stuff kind of like Steely Dan and stuff. It's a little yacht rocky now that I think about it.
Awesome.
And it's funny because I dig yacht rock because it reminds me of when I was a kid.
Exactly.
You know?
I don't know how many. Like, honestly, my Sirius XM radio is Ozzy's Boneyard, Hair Nation, Yacht Rock,
Yeah.
the Beatles. It's just boom. That's
Right.
it. You start getting into the pop 2Ks and all that, and that's more for the wife.
Yeah, yeah.
But for me, it's just those four.
It's just something about. I mean, I say it a lot nowadays, and it makes me feel old and dated. But there's not bands nowadays that you're gonna remember in 40 years. I just don't think that there is. I think the 70s and the 80s, those bands, they're just gonna last. I mean, the 60s even, they last forever. But I don't think when I'm 60, 70 years old, I'm gonna be looking to try to hear Dave Matthews Band or anything like that. I mean, nothing wrong
Right.
with Dave Matthews Band,
Right.
but like when you think like the Rolling Stones and you listen to their stuff in the 60s, it's so good. And then you're like, man, music was so good back then. And now you kind of go, yeah. Every now and then you hear a really good song, but there's not like these, I feel like these bands that are just going to stand the test of time.
True. Very
You know?
true. Yeah. I think there was still avenues of creativity there that now it doesn't feel like there is. The creativity is diminished so much. People are too scared to leave their lane.
Yeah.
It's like this works. I'm going to stay right here, and this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
And that's not what those bands did. I mean, if you listen to Def Leppard On Through the Night and then Def Leppard High and Dry, those are two completely different albums.
Yep.
And then Pyromania, and then all of a sudden Hysteria. It's like this band said, we're more than just this. And they created different things,
Yeah, I feel like this generation of music, they're scared to take chances.
Exactly.
And
I
it's
feel
like, like again, it's like cookie cutter, and it's like you got a formula. Yeah, it works, but Spread your wings. Try something different. Don't be afraid to try something different and see what not everything can be a home run, right?
Right.
Nowadays, if you're batting 300, they say that's good.
Oh,
But
there's songs that Avalanche wrote in 1991 that even members of the band are like, don't ever bring that song up, But then it was we just had a groove and we went with the groove, and next thing you know, we had a song, and for a good 6 months, it was the greatest song ever. And
yeah,
then
exactly.
It's like, nah, not so great, not so great.
That's great.
So a lot of times I bring musicians in and we talk about when they first hit the scene, who is their musical idol. Now, your story is a little different because you're a music fan, but you're not a musician. And getting into this business of music was almost happenstance, right?
Hmm.
Can you give me a little bit about how that started for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was always a fan of music, and I would hang around like the clubs. I'd hang around First Ave, hang around all that type of stuff. Um, I literally like right place, right time, basically for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just a young punk at a bar one night, hanging out, and I happened to be standing at a urinal next to Remy Maxwell from 93X.
Dirt bag du
And
jour.
we went to wash our hands, and he was doing like an appearance there, him and Pablo, and Remy's like, he goes upstairs, and I walk upstairs, and he's doing his thing with the microphone. And all of a sudden, he's like, "Hey, there's this guy down here. He looks like Fred Durst. Where's he at? There he is." And he points at me, and I'm like, "What do you want?"
Were you
Like,
wearing a red hat?
I did. I had a red hat on.
Nice. Okay.
And so, of course, back then, Limp Bizkit was a big deal, and so he brought me out and had me do this stupid crap for the people that were in the bar, and it was a hit. And then I just happened to be the night that I'm there, like Pablo and Remy are there, some bunch of people from 93X, Neil Hines was there, who's Nick Davis, as everybody knows.
Yeah.
Like he was like the head of promotions at the time, and they literally were like, "Hey, you want to go work for the radio station?" Like I was like, "Are you guys serious?" They're like, "Yeah, we'll call you." Well, then like literally like 2 days later, I get a phone call, and they're like, "Yeah, come down to the radio station, interview with us, whatever." They just gave me a job on the spot. And they said, "Well, you're working Saturday at Ozfest." Okay, and that is literally, and it was like that was the moment where I was like, okay, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life at the time. I think I was working for like a printing company or something like that with my grandfather, because I worked with my grandpa.
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. And at that moment, I started working for the radio station, doing promotions and stuff for them. And then I was there not a month, maybe 2 months. And I worked a lot, and I was working for free back. That's
yeah.
back when interns didn't get
Yeah.
paid.
What was the year of that?
Night, it would have been the year 2000.
Right, right.
Yep.
So at that time, I think I was still there part time hanging out with
Yep.
with Patrick doing not metal shop. That was Nick. I'd always hang out there and hang out with Nick and Randall. But I was doing the Loud and Local with Patrick a bunch, and that's where we originally met. Was that?
Yep.
But one thing that I would add, and then I'll have you continue your story, is the coolest thing about 93X in that era was they were in charge of their own creativity.
Yep.
It's not the way it is now. Corporate rules everything, and creative has to flow through so many filters. But like you're saying, Remy sees you, he talks you up for that night, and you play along, and boom, now you're just kind of like, okay, he's cool. Let's see what we can do with this.
Yeah.
And it grows from there. So tell me more about that.
Yeah. So I mean, I worked my butt off for the first couple months I was there, and then I remember Neil pulling me in the office and be like, "Hey, we're going to pay you now." Oh, okay. I'm going to get paid to do this, and this is just fun. I'm going to get paid to do it. Okay, yeah, and you're going to do this stuff, and then I mean, it wasn't that long after Weasel called me one day and said, "Hey, we want you to come on the morning show. Come and be like the street guy and go around do stupid stunts and come up with little skits, and every now and then you'll talk." I'm like, yeah, I guess I can do that. Of course, I didn't really think it through real well, where I'm going and working at a bar till 2 a.m. and then having to be at the radio station at 5 a.m. I didn't think that out. But for some reason, my brain just went, okay, we're going to do this.
Sure.
So I did that for a long time.
What was your craziest stunt that the morning show made you do?
Well, our good friend Ryan Giles will remember this one.
Okay.
We were doing a Thanksgiving thing, raising money for Thanksgiving for shelter or something like that. And I happened to have an uncle who was a turkey farmer. So he came up with the idea, let's kidnap a turkey. So Ryan and I, in an ice storm, drove out to Amory, Wisconsin, picked up a turkey at this farm and drove it back to Minnesota. And all week, the thing on the morning show was, Paul's holding this, he's holding this turkey hostage and he's feeding it turkey.
Oh my God.
And that really was. I was feeding it Carl Buddy turkey all week. And then people wanted to save the turkey, so they had to come donate stuff at like Cub Foods and stuff. So we went all week. We did this. I mean, it was hilarious. That thing stunk so bad by the end of the week. So then Ryan and I, we kept it out in the garage of the radio station.
Okay.
So then at the end of the week, we're like, we got to bring this thing back. So we load it back up. And by now this turkey's pissed. So we get it in the van and we drive it back to Wisconsin in the middle of the afternoon. We get it to like the farm. And I didn't know this until years later that my Uncle Mel was like, we watched you guys. We watched you try to get that turkey out of the van. The 93X van, by the way. We get it up and we just basically throw it into this barn and we just turn tail and fucking leave.
Was the turkey in a cage?
Yeah, we had it in a cage.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we had.
So did your uncle know that you took it in the first place?
Oh yeah, he was in on the whole thing.
Okay.
He thought it would be quite funny. And he's like,
It sounds
I'll give
like
you
it
guys a turkey. I do remember when we drove out there too. We actually got in an accident in the van because it was an ice storm. We slid down into a ditch. They came and pulled us out with a tractor.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see, what's another one I did? I laid in a car when a monster truck drove over it. That was different.
Now, how did they promise you wouldn't die?
They said I'd be totally fine.
Sure.
Yeah, and that was the one where I got a phone call then from my mother. She said, "My friends just said that you did a stunt."
How close did the crushed come?
No, it didn't even come close. But
okay.
It was, it was scary. It was loud. Well, of course, you're on the cell phone. Back then, you had the cell phone, the big brick, and you're talking on it while it happens. And yeah.
Wow, man.
Yeah, we did some fun stuff back then,
So how did that transition into your next career then?
Well, I did that for a while. And then when I left radio, the first thing that I actually went and did full time was I went and worked for PBR, Pabst Blue Ribbon. And I was their national field marketing rep.
And that's still a Minnesota company, right?
It was Chicago, but they had a lot of Midwest stuff. And basically the job was go to all these different towns and throw parties. So that's what I did. I went to Portland a lot, went down to California, went all over the place, went to St. Louis, just basically threw parties and left.
Did you have to cold call bars and say, hey, I'm with Pabst Blue Ribbon, I'd like to come and do a promotion
we'd like
at
to come
your bar?
do a party at your bar.
So were you the one doing the cold calling too? Or did they give you a list of bars?
It was kind of a mixture. I did a lot of the calling myself, or once I got to town, maybe I was going to be there for a couple of days, I'd just kind of go around and show up. And I mean, one of the promotions we did here in Minnesota was at the Triple Rock, the old Triple Rock.
Oh yeah.
And we did a Tall Boys and Bacon promotion where we every single Thursday night we'd serve $2 Tall Boys and we just cook pounds and pounds of bacon. And
so
this was
you
way
would
before COVID, obviously.
You would show up with a grill and
no, they cooked it for me. But
oh, okay. I'm going. You're throwing a hell of a party if you're bringing a smoker and everything else.
Just bacon. We just literally make bacon. There'd be plates of bacon all over the bar. Boy, it used to be fun back in the day. You know that?
I do remember there was a lot of promotions back then, Jägermeister promotions, all those types of things where they'd bring the Jäger girls in and or even Marlboro and Camel promotions.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So I do remember bars back then were where you went to find your people that you could sell to. Yep. Sell your brand to. I don't know if that's the same case anymore. I play a lot in bars, and I don't
see that. You don't
see
it that often anymore. I think there's a lot more laws now. Like
Yeah.
I remember we could give people, we could literally walk up and hand people full beers, no problem. We paid for it, you know. Now you can't even give somebody like 2 ounces of a sample, or it's illegal,
Wow.
you know. So a
Okay.
lot's changed back then.
All
Again,
right.
but I mean, yeah, I worked at PBR for a couple years on and off, and then I was also at the same time working with other bands. I was kind of getting working a bit with Roadrunner Records, kind of just in and out. Like, hey, they'd ask me to go do something, maybe go do a few dates out on a tour or whatever, just to help out.
Like, what were you doing? Were you tour managing, roadieing? What
I
were you
was
doing?
doing a lot of tour assisting.
Okay.
Sometimes I'd have to tour manage for whatever.
So you'd be there saying, "Hey, we need to make sure that they're getting
Yeah,
their drinks, they're getting their towels, they're
yeah,
getting everything that's on the rider."
babysit adults.
Gotcha.
Good
Yeah.
good times. And I met doing that stuff along with my PBR stuff. I met, and I even from my radio days, made so many relationships, and but really started to learn the business
Yeah. The
of
music business.
music and of promoting and concerts, and especially tours, like how tours need to run, and what artists needs and what venues need and all that stuff. And it's like it's a whirlwind, because it went by so fast, but at the same time, like I didn't I went to IPR for about 2 months
To do.
to do learn production and learn music business stuff.
Gotcha.
And when I was there, because at the time I was still in radio at the time, I was bored because I'm like, I already know how to do this stuff. So I didn't stay real long at IPR, and then but I had knowledge of stuff. So once I left PAPS and once I left PAPS, I just kind of got more into the music business. Started working all the time for bands, or for kind of going off on my own and doing a little freelance stuff. Like, hey,
So let me ask this real quick, just to interrupt for a second. You're doing promotions for a beer company, and you worked at a radio station doing promotions. How does Roadrunner reach out to you to do tours and manage stuff like that? Where does that
a lot
connection come from? Where did you meet them and build that?
a lot of it is from building relationships with guys that are in bands.
Okay.
And then they say, hey, we know this guy. Well, maybe we should give him a shot. Maybe
There you go.
he could probably help us.
There you go.
And and me, unfortunately, I won't call it an addictive personality, but I have a personality where if I start doing something, I can't. I'm not wired to do it. Let's just do it for fun and half-ass. I have to try to be the best
Yep.
at it.
Yep.
And it's a very, like, I have the way my brain works. I have like a checklist in my brain, every single thing. So I like literally am putting together entire plans in my head, and basically it becomes itineraries. And so that's kind of what happened. And it was like I did this for years and years and years. And I'm a diabetic, so eventually what happened is I just got tired.
Mm-hmm.
I got tired. I couldn't be out on the road anymore. I couldn't do that. And so I came home finally, and I said, I'm done with the music business. Never going back. It's, even though I know I loved it, I'm like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
In fact, I got a couple dogs, so it would make me stay home to ground myself. And then just happened, the way fate would have it. A friend of mine was managing a bar over here in
Fridley.
called GB Layton's Pickle Park.
Now called Route 47.
Yep. And he called me one day and he's like, "Hey man, I know you're not touring anymore or anything, but I know you still know a lot of people in the business, and I could really use a guy to come in here and like just be the entertainment guy and like book bands and just kind of run shows for us and kind of help us promote this bar." So all the things that I'm good at, he wanted me to do.
You even gave me a call at that time when you were doing that to do a tribute night there.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
It was early. I don't know. Was it TNT or was it Fools then? I think it might have been Fools.
It might have been Fools. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll give it a try, And I ended up like taking like a fish to water, booking bands, putting together shows, running the shows, making sure the venues take care of, because I already knew how to take care of the acts.
Yeah.
But then I had to go on the venue side and figure out, okay, how do we make this work for the venue?
How are
do
they
we
making
make
their money?
doing this? and then how do you promote it correctly to the right people and all that stuff. So I mean, I did that, and we did some pretty big shows at Pickle Park. If you remember, I mean, we had we had Seven Dust play there. I remember we had, some other big national acts came in there, but we did a lot of stuff. I did a lot of stuff with local bands.
Prior to you doing that, those bigger events would always happen at the Rock.
Yeah, yeah,
But you were part of that transition where all of a sudden you could go and see maybe not today's big hit
Yep.
band, but the big hit band from yesterday that'll get maybe 3
yep,
thousand in.
yep.
You do put them there.
And I just really enjoy, but I really liked working with the local scene. So then I started doing like some loud and local shows with original acts from the scene, because we all know, like you and I grew up when the Minneapolis scene was like, we all know about the scene from the 80s, but it was that the hard rock scene of
Yeah.
Minneapolis. And
Yeah.
it was the tail end of that, but I was working with all those bands, getting them to come in and play. And I mean, out of that, I ended up becoming, managing Emergent, who were at one time the massive
Yeah.
band that, they were ready to break and go far. These things happen with bands. You know how it is.
Oh yeah.
So yes, I did that for a few years, and then when we renamed it the Park, we had a really bad owner that owned the place. Didn't really know how to own a bar, I guess you could say. And I ended up leaving because I just didn't want to deal with it any longer. I mean, I felt like my effort it wasn't worth where I saw it going.
Right.
Eventually, that place just
A lot
closed.
of brand new owners come in with their own
Yep.
ideas and their own thoughts, and somebody that doesn't actually serve a drink or cook a sandwich.
Yep.
They just don't know what you do.
I remember meeting with the guy who bought it eventually and renamed it Route 47. I remember meeting with him, and I loved he in fact he still had the napkin with the ideas that I gave him for that bar, and he showed it to me the first time I went in there after it became Route 47. He's like, I did it, and I was like, this place is awesome now.
Nice.
I was like, you did everything that you needed to do, and it was so cool to see it kind of get life breathed back into it, because it was sad when it closed.
Yeah.
So yeah, so from there, I kind of went quiet for a couple years. I was still managing a couple bands here in town, but I went down to Treasure Island and got a job. I was managing like their bar department, and I did that for
So you walked into TI and got a job managing the bar.
just their bar department, yeah.
Okay.
Which
All right.
I bit off a little bit more than I thought I was biting off, but like everything else, I figured it out.
Yeah.
Was doing it, but at the time, they had a different entertainment person, and then COVID happened. So COVID happened, and then that was kind of, when Ti did no entertainment for about 18 months, I want to say, and then when it came back real quietly, real slow. And a couple months after it came back, the person that was running entertainment, she left. And then naturally, right away, I get the phone call like, "You're the guy."
So they knew
that
your
they already
history.
knew they had me, and they're
Do you
like,
think they knew that when they hired you as bar manager? Like, we're going to hire him here, but we
"Well,
know.
I don't know. I feel like there's certain people that are in that building still that kind of said we always knew you were going to be the entertainment person at some point." But when they approached me and said, "Do you want the gig?" I was like, man, I go from booking. I'm going to go from booking like $5,000 acts to, well, there's a big difference between booking TNT, the cover band, and Carrie Underwood,
Yeah.
the superstar, right?
Absolutely,
and I'm like,
man.
that's a lot to bite off, but knowing the way my brain works, I can do it. But also, here's another very important thing. I saw an opportunity to not only add another feather to my cap, but there was a team there in place that reminded me of me. I have an assistant who you've met him, Garrett.
Garrett's
He is
amazing.
fantastic. And here's the thing. I saw so much of me in him that I'm like, I want to teach him.
Right.
I want this kid on my team. So I felt the opportunity, the way that I was brought up in the business, to pass it on
Yeah.
to somebody else. And literally like him and I and another person on my team, Luke, she's, you know, my hospitality person. We have built this thing at TI that is, I mean, we have these massive bands come into town and play that venue, and they're like, holy moly, this is the greatest place that we have played. Because, not because we're the greatest venue in the world, it's because of how we treat people. And the reason we treat them that way is because I know, I've seen it on all ends,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, you invited Anthem to play, and I'll tell you, we we had decided we were only going to do a few shows. That was, I think, the second to the last show we were going to do. The way you treated us that day, before that day was over, everyone was like, "Should we do this again next year?"
Yeah,
You know,
right.
it was the conversation started.
Yep.
You were on top of it from the beginning when we arrived. Garrett was so friendly as well, and Luke,
Luke, yeah. Yeah.
she, I mean, that trailer was just packed full of everything we could think of and
Yeah.
not think of.
I have a
We were
weird,
covered.
I have a really weird, like every band that comes through. And I just literally had this conversation 2 weeks ago with a band named Wild Horses. They're from Grand Rapids, Minnesota. They're a bluegrass band. You know, they're not used to getting treated. And I go, I don't care who you guys are. You're gonna get treated the same. Just like, because here's the way that I think as a music booker. I don't care if there's 100 people or 15,000 people. It's the same amount of work for me. So I'm going to put the same amount of effort into every single act that comes to town.
That's
Why?
awesome.
Because word of mouth is way more important than anything else.
Yeah, and right now, Treasure Island too. The other thing that I wanted to say to you, even when I mentioned that we were going to talk, I was thinking about it. You're bringing in music now that isn't just necessarily for the older generation.
Right.
That's different. Most casinos forever was playing to the older generation because that's their normal clientele.
Right.
But you're playing to the 30 and 40-year-olds right now, and you're drawing them into the casino life.
It's exactly. And it's like, I've learned that over the last, I say I've really zeroed in on that in the last year where, okay, so, you know, the casino life, Treasure Island's been around for 40 years. They've concentrated on that one generation for so long. That generation slowly is unfortunately going away.
Yep.
So what's next?
Yeah.
Well, in 1990, sure, you know, Foreigner was the greatest. Oh my God, Foreigner's going to be there, right? Well, now we can bring Foreigner in with our eyes closed, but that Foreigner fan is now 75, going on 80 years old, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you're a fan of Buck Cherry, you're our age. And guess what 50-year-olds like to do? Gamble.
There you go. Yeah, you're bringing them in. So
That's what I mean. So it's like it's a transitional thing, but at the same time, it's cool for me because it's like, oh, I love this music, you know. So, you know, I really enjoy what I do because I get to create these experiences for people because I know how music makes me feel.
yeah.
And guys like you, it's just ingrained in the way we go about our life. Everything seems to revolve around it. But when you can see the look on somebody's face when they're having an experience, because you could see the emotion, that's cool, man.
Music is one of those things like, now 53 years old. I've written a bunch of music. I've performed that original music. I've joined cover bands. I've been in cover bands now probably more than I've been in the original bands now. But it is a weird thing that I would rather be on a stage playing for hundreds of people that are having a good time for free than play in front of 30 people at a private party for $1,000.
Yep.
It's a weird thing.
Yeah, music is it's the one art form. I truly believe it's the one art form that it's like a you can hear something different than I can, or it affects everybody different. But that's what's cool about it because everybody interprets everything different.
Yeah.
So every genre, it doesn't matter what the genre is. If the song tells a good story and if that story means something to you, that's what musicians are trying to do.
Yep.
You know, that again, I go back to the generation, the music now, it's a little bit different. It's like they're not writing stories. There's certain genres that are the bluegrass and the Americana genre right now. It's unbelievable. Some of the rock is coming back a little bit, but some of that pop music, it's like you're like, what are they trying to do here? I'm not ripping it because it's
Right.
talent, and those producers are unbelievable, and it's fantastic. But it's like music has an ability to brighten your day, or it can take you down. It gives you joy, and it can make you mad. I mean, some people like it because it helps them get frustrations out. It's just one of those things, and I take a lot of joy in bringing that to people so that they can spend, if they're spending 3 hours at my venue for a concert, I want them to forget for 3 hours about the crap that's happening out in this world that we live in nowadays.
Yeah.
Because this
Absolutely.
world could get really rough nowadays. You know,
Absolutely,
especially
sir.
this election time and all that stuff, and it's just like, just forget about that for a minute. Let's just all go in and enjoy this music.
So let me ask you this. You are booking at Treasure Island. You can bring in a band that, on the parking lot stage, you bring in a few thousand people and you're happy. Amphitheater, you got to bring in a lot more people to be happy. If you could pick your favorite band or your favorite genre, what would you want to hear at your venue?
Boy, that's a loaded question there. Um, you know, right? I mean, if I could put together the perfect show, this is what it would be. If I was going to take a band from right now, it'd be a band called Shane Smith and the Saints. There's something about their music that just speaks to me. It's the way they write their songs, the way that they build. Now, if you know me, you'd be like, "What, really?" Like they're like it's not bluegrass, it's not country, it's like this big Americana band, but the stories that they tell and is big. But that's who I would nowadays.
Okay.
But if I could bring Nirvana back, I'd bring them back in 3 seconds, and I'd want to listen to Kurt Cobain whine and do all his stuff. Something about that whining always spoke to me. He's probably my favorite musician of all time,
Wow.
which is
All right.
really odd, but I just don't know. There's something about the lyrics that he wrote.
Yeah.
And then if I thought about something from when I was growing up, I'd want the Temptations there.
Look at that.
Because the Temptations remind me of being a kid, seeing how much joy that the Temptations brought to my parents.
Right on.
And yeah, I mean, because it's just like music just been such a big part of my life, and it's like, I mean, I'm having a show, and you're going to be there in a few weeks, called Yachtly Crew. Now, the funny thing about Yachtly Crew is that show is probably going to be very emotional for me because every single song I hear, it's going to remind me of going to a laundromat with my mom when I was a kid. So I remember sitting in that laundromat and hearing all those yacht rocks. But I never knew what the genre of music was
Yeah.
until all of a sudden I find the same station, Yacht Rock. And I'm like, wait, I love all these songs. And I remember telling my dad about it. I'm like, have you heard this radio station? And I play, and he's like, that. And then I called my mom down in Florida, and I'm like, you got to hear this station. So I took my Sirius subscription, and I put it in her TV so she can listen to Yacht Rock all the time down in Florida.
There you go.
And I'm like, but it's just like, again, it's just like, yeah. So it's just like, man, I don't know. It's going to be cool.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. When I was a kid, my mom we'd always clean the house on Saturday morning, and she would always turn on. She was big on Beatles. She was big on Moody Blues. She was big on Carly Simon. So when we listen to Yacht Rock, it's like, oh my gosh, it
Yeah.
exactly that. It transports you back to when you're a little kid,
mm-hmm.
and even though you're like, I haven't heard this song in 45 years, I'm singing along with it.
Instantly,
Yeah.
you know it, and it's
So
crazy.
that's gonna be fun, man. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So what's next for you then? What? I mean, you came from a guy in his 20s just going to the bar on a Thursday night probably, because Hog's Breath, I believe, was where that was at, and they would always run that promotion like Tuesday or Thursday or something like that. It wasn't
Tuesday
even a
nights.
weekend.
Yeah.
So a 20-year-old kid having a beer during the week, and now you're the entertainment director at one of the major casinos in the state.
I mean, it's gonna keep doing what I do. I mean, as long as I enjoy it, it doesn't feel like a job.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I still put in long hours. I still work way too much, which I have always done. But again, it ain't work if you love it. right? You know,
Yeah.
I just want to keep bringing cool shows. And I did last year develop a new music festival called Music by the Mississippi. We're going to continue to grow that this year. We got some pretty good surprises, you know.
Awesome.
Starting to announce shows for outside next year. You know, we got Weird Al coming. That should be a fun one.
Well, you know, Fool Fighters always available.
Yeah, I know, exactly. I mean, I'm sure we'll do a bunch of more tributes and, you know, maybe some sort of tribute fest would
Cool.
be really cool to do. But yeah, I mean, just continue to go down, hunt down cool opportunities to bring, you know, people just you keep offering people the greatest, you know, choices they can have in entertainment without also killing them with these super high prices. That's another thing, you know, we keep our prices, try to keep them low. I mean, if you're coming to the casino, we know you're going to spend money.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to do.
Yeah, that I'll tell you, early November, there's a couple of concerts I want to see, and they happen in the same week. And I'm like, man, I actually have to save money
Yeah.
because I got to afford 2 different concert tickets
Yeah.
and 2 different nights out in the
Right.
same week.
Yeah.
So, and concert tickets for at least the bands I want to see, they're not as cheap because, you know, this might be the last time you see these fellas.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
they're charging a premium. So,
Yeah, and that's the thing, though. It's you know the business has changed so much since, especially since COVID. But you know, bands they're not making money off record sales anymore, so they're only making record off of tours and merchandise. And, you
Yeah.
know, and that's why you go to a concert now and $60 for a T-shirt. I saw a show a couple months ago at the Armory. They were selling a hoodie. I don't remember. I think it was Sum 41. Was selling a hoodie for $150.
wow.
And I went, $150 for a hoodie?
Wow.
Come on, really? But you know what? That's how bands are making their money now. So you got okay.
And sometimes the bands do have to pay the venue like 25%
right.
too, just to sell it there.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen like Metallica and some of these other bands where they'll outsource to a different location to pick up their stuff,
which is
and
smart.
they don't have to pay the venue for that.
One of the things I do down at Treasure Island is I'm very flexible with merch stuff. If it's especially if it's a local band, I'm not going to charge. I'm not going to take their money. I'm just not. I don't even like taking merch money. Sometimes you kind of like for our outdoor shows, yeah, because we know it's hundreds.
Listen, if you're going to provide the person, the area, the lighting, all the things, like if I walked in there and you went, give me your merch, it's going right over there, we'll take care of it and give you a tally at the end of the night, I'm paying you 25% all day.
But, you know, again, the bands that come and play at our venues, they don't get any of the money of the alcohol sales. So why am I getting your merch money? I don't. I'm very flexible with it.
That's fair.
You know, we have to put stuff on the contract, but I'm usually the night of. I'm like, you guys just pay me the tax because we're tribal, so you have to collect the tax. But honestly, I mean, you pay the tax, you're good to go in my book.
Yeah. But again, I mean, if you're going to have Carrie Underwood there, and there's a lot of money moving there, and it's part of the way that things are run, and you're probably going to have to manage some of that with them. Maybe not for them, but with them.
Usually got to store it for them.
Yep. So I can understand where that percentage needs to come in for something like that.
Yeah.
But like you said, say it was my band Hollywood Boulevard, we're going to come in there with 30 shirts in a bin and maybe we'll sell 10 of them.
I'm not going to be like, no, you guys, you're good.
Thanks, man. I got that on camera.
You got that on camera now. Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Well, that's all I had for you, sir. I mean, I got to always ask, do you have anything for me? Because I've been talking the whole dang time to you about asking you questions.
Yeah, when are you getting TNT back together? Remember I got on stage with you a couple times. I remember back in the day.
We put TNT back together a couple of years ago. We did a 1.5-year run. Soup retired. Our drummer retired. We were bringing on Tony Williams to drum. We ran into some challenges there that, not with him, but challenges just getting everybody together to practice, I guess. Yeah. And it kind of imploded. So we just kind of walked away and said we're fine.
It's kind of funny because, you know, all the people that I grew up with, you know, our generation, like, you hear the same thing about every band. Well, it was getting too hard because everybody has lives and you either got families or whatever.
Well, you also get to the age where you just don't want to deal with bullshit.
Yeah.
When you're in your teens and your 20s, you'll go through a lot of crap for your art.
Yes. You
But
will.
when you're in your 50s, you're like, I'd rather stay home.
Right. Right.
I got to work, and then I'm going to go home, and this has now become work. I don't need that.
Yeah. That's what I say. If you enjoy it, it doesn't feel like work. But once it feels like a job, and you start to like, ugh. I have a saying, and this is always my saying. I told this to my boss actually. I said, it's not that I have to go to work. I get to go to work today. I get to go do something that I really enjoy doing.
There you go.
So until the day comes where I say, ugh, I got to go into work today. When that happens, I know it's the end is coming near.
Yeah, you have to change something about your life when that is your
Yep.
day.
Yep.
You know, and if you can't fix it, then you got to move on to something else.
Yeah. Because if I can't put my whole mind and heart into doing something, it's to me it's like, oh, I don't like to half-ass much.
Right.
So,
I hear you, man.
You know.
Paul, thank you so much for coming here.
Thanks for having me, man.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
See ya.